welcome to How to Deal When the Shit Gets Real podcast. I'm Rietta, and today I am here with the lovely Kenzii. So, Kenzii, how do you deal when the shit gets real? Or just tell us a little bit about yourself.
Hi, Rietta. I'm so glad to be here. I am a mental health advocate. I work with AFSP. If you don't know what that is, it's American Foundation of Suicide Prevention. And I work with two of their programs, one of them being Solace, which is a group that I co-facilitate on Saturday mornings that help people that have lost people to suicide. The second one is Healing Conversation, which is more one-on-one counseling sessions. And what makes me uniquely qualified to do that is that I've lost several people to suicide, and I also struggle with my own mental health.
Well, first, I want to say I'm very sorry that you've had to lose people to suicide. There's not enough words for it, honestly.
Mm-hmm.
But I've loved that you've turned it into this beautiful journey, this healing journey. How did you get started with Solace and then the one-on-one coaching?
So it really goes back to 2020. I lost my older brother to suicide. And thankfully, I already had a care team in place. And my therapist actually referred me to a place that led me to Solace. And Solace at the time was meeting in person. And it's all online now, but it was meeting in person for my very first session. And that was before the pandemic hit, of course, in 2020 and changed kind of how everything worked out. But I was introduced to Solace, and it was just a small group of people, all different ages, all different losses. Someone had lost somebody in like 1972, and it's been like, so many years since they had that loss, and some people that have lost people more recently, and I was one of the more recent people. And so I got involved by just being a member and just attending. It's free membership, and there's no expectations for you to come every week or anything like that. It's a drop-in program. So it was really helpful for me, and I went with my mom, and it was a place where we could feel comfortable talking about our losses, because though we're around each other, me and my mom, it wasn't like we were constantly talking about the loss or talking about the nuances and the feelings that came with the loss. So it just became a great bridge for me and my mom to communicate about the loss of my brother. And from that, I attended for months. I then unfortunately lost another friend to suicide in September of that year. And that group just held me down through all of that. And it was an amazing support. And I later became asked to facilitate that group. So I now facilitate every other month. And that's been really helpful for my journey as well, too, to help other people that are going through those similar struggles.
Is Solace worldwide, or is it just where you are located?
It is worldwide. You can attend through Zoom Saturday mornings, and I'm sure I can give you some information. You can put it in the description or something like that. But
yeah,
it is worldwide. We have some people from all over tuning in, sometimes from France, Canada, you name it, and it's a really good resource. It's helped me a lot.
It sounds like a beautiful resource, even in a very difficult space, which, I mean, is super important, right?
Mm-hmm. Definitely.
So you unfortunately lost your brother. I can't imagine. What was that like? Was there any signs or anything that you wish that you picked up on? I know that's probably a hard question, but
Definitely, and that's a valid question. For my brother and my friend, they were both similar in the way they're probably the two people that could make me laugh the hardest. They were so funny and loving and encouraging. And, my friend that I lost, Reek, was like a cheerleader. He cheered me on every step of my way of my life, like everything that I accomplished. He was the first person to comment, and just really encouraging and lovely. And my brother, he had this kind of a hard exterior. He had a harder upbringing. He was bullied pretty severely through elementary school, middle school, and some of high school. And so it was hard for him to find his own space. But he would go around with a very serious face on, but I could always get him to crack a smile, and make him lighten up a little bit. And, as far as science goes, up to leading up to his death, I would say there was signs that I didn't even see as signs. I was very involved with my own mental health and my own struggle at the time. And, one of the signs was that his room was just unbearably messy, unbearably messy. But I just wrote it off as like, what my brother's such a slob. Like he just needs to get it together. He's just such a slob. And he was having a lot of hard struggles with his work and finding, I guess, his purpose. And so I tried to be there for him as much as possible, but you know, sometimes
Do the
it's,
best we can.
yeah, exactly. We could just do the best we can. And so that was really hard. But
Was his room not normally messy? Was he not normally a messy person?
I think it fluctuated a lot. So it was, I guess, like there was moments where it was really together and moments when it was really messy. And we did live together at the time. So I think, and then it would move from his room to his car being a little bit messier than usual and stuff like that. So just little signs like that, and just, I think he was feeling very frustrated, like I said, with his job and finding his purpose. And I think, there's not like, and this is something I learned through solace too, is that there's not like one event that is like the straw that the camel, how that saying go, camel that broke the straw's back, or the straw that broke the camel's back. There you go.
There.
Um, there's not like one instance, like sometimes I've heard people say like, oh, so and so took their life because their girlfriend broke up with them. And it's not just like one thing that will do that. It's a series of events throughout your life, and is more like a mentality. Some even say it's something that is altering in the wiring of someone's brain, that whenever something bad happens, they hyper like fixate on that bad thing. Let's say they get their grades home and it's all A's and they have one C plus or even a D maybe. They're going to fixate on that D, not all the A's, or maybe a teacher wrote a nice note about something that they did. They're going to focus on what was wrong in that instance. So it's a different wiring. And then it's like, oh, I suck. I shouldn't live because I got this one D. Maybe they got 4 or 5 A's, but that one D they fixate on and focus on. So it's just like a different wiring, and just understanding that was helpful to me at one point, because I didn't want to just blame his job environment, to see that there's a bigger picture to it all.
I mean, that makes sense. I think, as humans, we look for an answer, and a lot of times we want to focus on that one thing being an answer. And
Yeah.
that was a great explanation of you saying that, that they hyperfixate on things. Was it similar with your friend Reek?
Oh yeah, definitely. Definitely. And he had so many accomplishments and accolades. He was a filmmaker, he was a comedian, he started a sketch club with his friends. Like he did some amazing things. And it was really touching that after he passed, they did like a drive-in theater experience where you drove up the car. It was during the pandemic, of course. So they drove up your car, and there was like a whole video compilation of people talking about all the memories they had with Reek. And it was just like extremely touching. And you could just see all the lives he's touched. He's a USC graduate, just amazing things. But it's like all of those things, all those memories, all those people he's helped, but he would fixate on that one thing he didn't do right, that one sketch that didn't go right, or that one interaction. I was there when he had a bad interaction with one of his teammates, in his sketch comedy club, and he was fixating on that one instance instead of, the bigger picture of what they've accomplished as a sketch comedy. So just things like that.
I mean, what a beautiful memorial for him, though. It's too bad that he didn't get to see it to see how big his accomplishments really were.
Yeah. I always wonder if there could be a day of the year where people are all celebrated for who they are and what they are before they pass, like before the eulogy, like just to hear what their impact on other people's lives was. I
Yeah.
think that would just be just such a powerful thing. And birthdays are nice too, but like just like a day where people can just really soak it in. That would be so amazing.
There you go, Kenzie. That's your $1 million idea right there.
I'm
And now nobody can steal it because
gonna
it's
patent
cemented.
it.
You also mentioned in your pre-interview that you were diagnosed with being bipolar type 2. So I'm sure that probably brought a lot of emotions with it as well. So what kind of emotions did you go through? Was there like some sort of relief with it, or was it fearful?
So when I got my diagnosis, it was very scary time. I was diagnosed a little bit later in life. Some people are diagnosed in their early teens usually with bipolar, and I was diagnosed at 19 years old. I had really no idea until my diagnosis that that was what was wrong. I think I always sensed something was different about how my brain and emotions worked. But to get that diagnosis, I think the first emotion I remember feeling was anger. I didn't understand why me, I guess.
Hmm.
And the only person I knew at the time, I probably knew more people that were bipolar at the time. They just weren't going around saying that they were. But this one girl in my high school said mean things to people. And then she would go like, I'm just bipolar. And I'd be like, that's not an excuse for being a jerk.
No.
But like everything she would do that was mean, she was just like, I'm just bipolar. So that was like my first impression of people with bipolar. So when I found out I was bipolar, I was like, I can't be like this person. I don't want to be associated with this like condition. And so it took a lot for me to kind of read different books about it, even like hear comedians talk about it. I don't know if you know Maria Bamford. She's also bipolar, I think also bipolar type 2. So just watching one of her shows on Netflix was really extremely helpful. I think it's called Lady Dynamite. Was really extremely helpful to know that like there's all different, it's like a spectrum. It's not like everybody's like cut and dry like that person from my high school. But it was just so helpful to hear about different people, different celebrities even that have bipolar and how they deal with it, how they cope with it. And the more I learned about the condition, the easier it was for me to navigate. And with the help of a care team and medication is a part of my story, it was extremely like helpful to just navigate that with that help, and with that support. And also giving me words to like vocalize what I'm going through and talking to people and communicating. Because for the longest time I was queen isolator. When I would get in my depressive modes, I would just isolate and I would ice people out. And I can say now that I'm not like that. I'm not icing people out. I'm not isolating. I communicate when I'm going through things and what I need for support.
And you mentioned that you felt like your brain was different. What kind of things were you going through that you felt was so different from your peers?
So the thing that really set me off to getting my diagnosis was my first diagnosis out of high school. I was really extremely, extremely depressed. I did not want to leave my house. My room was extremely dark. One time, my friends came to get me, and they threw me over their shoulder and took me to the beach. Thankfully, I live close by the beach. And they threw me over their shoulder and took me to the beach, and I just sat there and cried. Like, I couldn't even enjoy the time. They were trying to like bring food that I like and everything like that and make it a special day, and I just couldn't even enjoy that. So I went to the hospital. Well, not the hospital, but the doctor set an appointment with my primary, and they said, you have depression. Simple as that. We're going to give you antidepressants. So they put me on an antidepressant, not knowing that I had bipolar. And a fun fact about bipolar is if you put somebody on bipolar on an antidepressant without any mood stabilizers, it's going to make them the opposite, which is manic. And so slowly but surely, I became extremely manic. And at first, it was like, oh, I'm not depressed anymore. I feel better. I feel euphoria. This feels amazing. And I was working at, I started to work and I was able to function better, I thought. So I started working at a sales store, and I thought I was the best saleswoman. I thought I was just like killing it. I was like people person. I was putting on different accents for different people shopping in the store. I was just like, I was an expert at everything. I was telling people like, oh no, this color looks better with your skin tone. Look at your, like I was just like an expert, right, on everything. And so it was like the hidden ego, the hidden like nonsense, really. And so I just thought I was the best at what I was doing. And I wasn't, like I was just like extremely manic. And it became to the point where I wasn't sleeping. I was
Mm.
staying up all night or staying out all night, and I was bringing strange people home. And, and it was just like hyper flirtation, hyper everything, and so it was a struggle for the people around me to see me go through that. And just like
Yeah.
huge toss up, like she's really depressed one moment and the next moment she's just being this exuberant person. And so
Yeah.
that was my struggle with bipolar for the beginning stages. Before I really realized I had bipolar, I just had mania and I didn't know what to do with myself.
I didn't realize when you became manic, I kind of just in my head pictured manic would be kind of the opposite of depression. You're just really happy and you're out and you're doing things. I didn't realize it made you like hyper flirtatious and hyper like ego. So that's really interesting.
Yeah, it's not manageable. You would think
No.
too, it's like, oh, well, you're not depressed. That's awesome. Perfect. Wonderful. But it's like to this point where you can't control. Another big part of it is the hyper, like the fix, like the filterless talk. It is just like vomiting, word vomit all the time. It's just like you can't control. And the thoughts, like just speeding through your head, and you're just trying to keep up with your head, and you're just spitting out all these like not maybe sometimes random, but like just no filter, just all of it coming out, and that can be so embarrassing sometimes.
It sounds exhausting, honestly.
Yeah, definitely. That's a good word for it. Exhausting.
Yeah, you weren't sleeping, so you were getting exhausted and then not sleeping. So that probably was just increasing the mania.
And then there's that crash and burn, because how long can you go doing that?
Yeah.
Without needing to be hospitalized or
Yeah.
yeah.
And I also didn't know there was, like you said, a spectrum of bipolar. So like are there differences? I'm assuming there are differences between like type 1 and type 2. Are there more than type 1 and type 2?
Type 1 and type 2, and I think rapid cycling is its own, or is it part of type 1? But it basically, rapid cycling is when you go through emotions rapidly. Like you might be depressed, then manic, then depressed, then manic, and then hypomanic or whatever. So you're just cycling very fast. For me, my episodes would last a couple of months. So I'd have maybe 3 months of depression and 4 months of mania, or if I last that long, and sometimes even with my type of bipolar, it could be a season. So maybe depression would be around the winter season, and then the summer it gets hotter, it's more time to go out and stuff, and that would be like the manic season. Or sometimes the opposite for me, where it would be very manic during the winter season and then very depressed during the summer season. But with bipolar type 1, what that looks like mostly would be a shorter stint of depression and mania, if I'm not mistaken. So it would be like maybe 2 weeks of this, 2 weeks of that, and mine's more spread out.
Okay, so that's the main difference is you kind of cycle how fast
The
you cycle
cycle, yeah,
through.
the cycling is different, yeah. And then
Okay.
also another big difference between bipolar type 2 and bipolar is bipolar type 2 has hypomania. So what hypomania is I guess more manageable mania is how
Okay.
I would describe it. Like you can function a little bit easier with hypomania, but you still have some of the symptoms of mania.
So it's almost kind of like a ramp up, like you're
Yeah,
halfway between.
yeah,
Got
yeah,
it.
yeah.
Okay, that's very helpful. I did not know any of that. Do you have any advice for others who might have just been diagnosed or dealing with a diagnosis and like still trying to kind of figure out their way?
Yeah, I know it's really scary. Anybody that just got diagnosed and you're listening to this, I would say let yourself feel these emotions. If you feel scared, feel scared. Don't have to rush through these emotions of scared or anger like I felt. Like I felt angry for a while. And I think the thing that helped me the most was to dig deeper, to listen to those TED Talks, to listen to those different audiobooks or read books and watch shows. Getting all that media into my brain was probably the most calming thing, because I felt less alone in that moment. I felt like I was able to see myself, look myself in the mirror, and know that I'm not alone and that there is help out there. And something that was really helpful for me too was to assemble a care team. And for me, that looked like having a good primary doctor that I can go to and talk to openly, having a psychiatrist for my medicine, and then also having a therapist was really helpful. And something that a therapist did for me really early on was to kind of make an agreement with them, because I've had my own struggles with suicidal ideation, and that comes with bipolar often. And to make a care plan with them and put down different numbers I can call. Maybe it's the 988 number. Maybe it's a hotline number. But maybe it's also 5 people that you can trust and call in your life, that you can call at any moment and they can help you talk you through anything. And you go through all those steps before you make any decisions, any harsh decisions that you might regret. Maybe it's self harm, or maybe it is an attempt. But to go through your resources and go through your care plan before. Maybe it's like call these people and then go on a walk. And then when you come back, write a letter. Okay, and then when you're done with that, go to sleep. And then the next morning, see how you feel. And then, whatever your care plan might look like. But I found that to be the most helpful for me, is to have a care team and a care plan.
Yeah, I'm sure probably having that like, set plan was really helpful. You didn't feel so out of control. At least I imagine how I would feel.
Yeah. Plans put me at ease. I'm a Virgo.
I love
With
it.
the Capricorn stellium.
Oh, you've got a stellium. I have a stellium too. I never remember where mine is, but it's kind of. It's kind of funny how it really does represent us in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
So you did mention you had your own struggle with suicide. So was the bipolar probably one of the main reasons that you battled with that? Were there other things you were going through? Was this before you were diagnosed? After?
It was something that I dealt with. Well, it's part of the reason why I got a diagnosis. I was hospitalized in December of 2012, and that's what led to my diagnosis. And what that looked like before was that I was burning out from my manic episode, and I was feeling suicidal. And I asked, actually, at the time, not knowing what I was signing up for, to be hospitalized because I didn't know how any other way I could stop myself from following through with those plans. And thankfully, I was able to get that kind of help. And it wasn't like I got the diagnosis and I never attempted again. I did attempt again twice after that. And, you know, there isn't like, for me at least, it wasn't like my first medicines that they put me on were the perfect medicines for me. And that was it. And I was healed and there was no other, problems. Sometimes it takes a few tries to get the right cuckoo cocktail working. But
Oh, I love that you
thankfully,
added a little humor there. That's wonderful.
thankfully, my cuckoo cocktail now works wonderfully. And I've had, abstinence from self harm. I've had abstinence from any suicidal ideation for at least 6 years now. And so that feels good to be in a place where I'm feeling a lot more mentally stable, and not only for my own good, but for hopefully others. I can help other people that have gone through that similar struggle.
Yeah, I have no doubt that you can, which is why you're here. But I had a very good friend in college that was bipolar, and I definitely remember going to her room and ripping the shades open and being like, "You're going to class today. I'm not letting you skip. I'm not letting you flunk out." Um, so it's so nice to hear it from the other side of like there was only so much I could do. I could drag her out of bed all I wanted, but until she got all the things that she needed, there was only so much I could do.
Yeah, and I'm sure she's really grateful for a good friend like that as well. But it
Oh
is
yeah.
it's a lot of things going on, the chemical imbalance. It's only so much our friends can do.
Right. Well, and you don't want to see your friend struggle and you try, but
Yeah,
again, you can only do so much. I can't do what a care team can do or what medication can do if that's needed.
yeah,
So,
yeah.
yeah. I know I've asked your advice a couple times already, but I'm going to continue to ask your advice for people that might be battling with suicidal ideation or family members that are trying to help people in their family that have suicidal ideations. Do you have anything that you would tell them?
I wish there was this perfect formula I could tell you right now that could just solve anybody's suicidal ideations if they're listening, or if they're a friend that has somebody that is struggling with that. I wish there was perfect formula, but fortunately, I do not know that formula. And I would say the best thing you can do as a friend or a family member is to listen to your friend or family member that is struggling and be a safe space for them. Try your best not to dismiss their feelings and just hear them out, but also give them resources. If you can look into some resources that would be helpful for them. And every person's different. Some people need a serious heart to heart when they're going through that. And some people just need a distraction. They need to laugh a little, they need to goof around. So I would say take that into account as well. What works best for that individual. And I think just knowing the person that is struggling really does help. But let's say you don't know this person, someone just opened up to you and said that they're feeling suicidal. I would say that it would be important to call the 988 number and try to get them help as soon as possible, because I think those certain things you want to take seriously. You don't want to brush it off because it is a serious matter.
Yeah. And I'm even happy that you just said like to use the 998 number because I think my first go-to would be to call 911. And I don't know if that would be, I mean, maybe that wouldn't even be sufficient enough.
There are different numbers other than 988. I know that one's easiest to remember, but there are different numbers, soft lines, I think as they'll call it, or you know, different numbers that you can call that are not going to be, how should I say, that might be better way to respond, because sometimes if you call 911, it could be an incident where somebody that shows up are not trained to help people with mental health, and so you want to be sensitive to that, and especially if they're feeling erratic or something like that, they're not in their best state of mind, they may not react to authorities as well. So I would say
That
take
makes
that into account if you do want to help someone, but you don't want to trigger them more.
that makes sense. Yeah, you definitely want somebody that would be the expert versus somebody that wouldn't. So that makes
Yeah,
sense. And then I'm assuming because we're here, do you believe it's important that we talk about mental health?
absolutely. Absolutely. And I think there's just so much stigma that is surrounded around our
Mhm.
mental health. And to take it like any other health conditions that we know of, you know? And it's important to just see people for who they are, you know? Don't just attach them as somebody that's crazy or unstable, but to just see them in their humanity and to treat them human. It's simple as that. But sometimes it's not simple for some people. So I think
Yeah.
we have a long way to go to get there, I think.
Yeah, I just talked with a guest, I think last week, about how different the world would be if we led with love and more of the things that we did. And especially in the mental health space, it would make a big difference. And just
Yeah.
being open, like you said.
Yeah. It makes all the difference to lead with love.
It does. It does. Have you had any negative reactions to you when you ever told people that you are bipolar? I'm sure you're not walking around just telling people, but
Yeah. I have. I have, unfortunately, because I guess for everybody knows somebody that is bipolar in a way. Well, I won't say everyone. I won't generalize it that much, but I've had people say, "Oh, you're bipolar? My ex-girlfriend was bipolar and she was crazy, like da 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 da." So I think just like tying like I did, even when I got diagnosed, I was like, the one person I know as bipolar is this mean person. I don't want to be this mean person. So it's like just understanding that it's so much more than that one person that you met that one time or whatever it is, that it's like I said, a spectrum of people, and different they're at different parts in their journey in their mental health. So just because you've met somebody and had a negative experience with them, I wouldn't write off all people that are bipolar.
no. I mean, we shouldn't be writing off people, period.
Yeah.
And I know y'all can't see Kenzii right now, but I met Kenzii through a wonderful group, and I could tell the moment that I met her that she has this very bright and lovely personality. So
Thank you.
definitely not anything that I would ever say about you, not that I would have anyway.
Yeah. Oh, thank you.
Yeah, I wish everybody could see you smile right now. So, final things, do you have any I always like to ask, especially since you mentioned books, do you have any book recommendations? It doesn't necessarily have to be related to bipolar, just book recommendations in general, and any final advice you'd like to leave the listeners with.
Hmm. It's always funny when people say book recommendations, like all the books I've ever read is out of my head.
Of
I
course, that's
will
how it always
I
goes.
will circle back to Lady Dynamite with Maria Bamford. I believe it's still on Netflix. Is a very comical take on her journey with bipolar. She talks about being in the mental hospital and also coming out of the mental hospital and moving in with her parents as like a 30 or 40-year-old. And it's just hysterical. But it's also really informative of like the experience people have with bipolar. So I would recommend that. She does have some good stand up surrounding her mental health,
I'm
which
gonna
I
watch it
would
for
recommend
sure.
as well. But as far as advice I would have for people that are listening, I would say my main advice is not to hold on to your stories too much. And what I mean by that is if you're struggling with mental health and you've gotten out of it or you've seen the flashlight that leads you to the end of the corner, at the end of the tunnel, I would say that you can help other people too. You can hand them your flashlight and you can help them through that hard time. And I think that's the most magical way of healing is to help others that are also struggling with that. And you don't really need to be very far through your journey to help others. You could just be a few steps further than that person and turn around and help others. And I think that's how you heal. That's how you get through it.
I love that. Handing your flashlight to the next person. I think that's beautiful. What a perfect place to end. Kenzie, thank you so much for taking the time to be here with me and being so raw and vulnerable.
Of course. Thank you for having me, Rieta.
And this is how to deal when the shit gets real. I'll see you guys all next episode.